Welcome to the podcast, Entrepreneur Perspectives, building and protecting your business one podcast at a time, a CADSource production. In this episode, we discuss making a difference, family, and Frank Reich. This episode is brought to you by the CADSource brand Podcast. Podcast is your podcast production team. You know how many business leaders need help communicating their story through audio? That's what we do. Podcast strategy, creation, and distribution for business leaders. This provides opportunities, relationships, and a platform for you and your business. Why do we do this? Because at Podcast, we exist to help you create and share amazing content through podcasts. Learn more by visiting podcast.com. Our guest today is Tony Tennaro, Managing Chair for C12 Greater Charlotte. I'm super excited to have Tony join me in our office for this chat. He is the kind of person you want to be around. And that's just not me talking. Ask any of the members of his C12 group, or just watch him walk into the office with a smile on his face. As you will hear from Tony in this chat, it's much about gratitude. And we are grateful for Tony spending his time with us. And with that, let's welcome Tony Tennaro. All right, so you grow up in New Jersey and you find yourself Maryland, University of Maryland.
Yeah.
How did you end up at Maryland?
I wanted to go away to school. I didn't want to stay and commute anywhere. I wanted to go live somewhere. So I applied to Penn State, Maryland, Connecticut, Delaware, and Rutgers in New Jersey. And I was accepted to all of them, I think. And then I went to see some of them, and I had a New Jersey State scholarship, and I had loans. That's how I paid for my college. And New Jersey allowed me to use my New Jersey State scholarship anywhere. I didn't have to stay at a New Jersey school. And Maryland was less expensive to be out of state than Rutgers was in state.
Yeah.
So the choice got pretty simple.
Yeah. I've heard that recently. So I went to the College of Charleston, and I was just talking to someone at the school, and they've been pulling kids from the East Coast. And I said, how are you pulling kids from, say, the North, from New Jersey area?
Yeah.
And they said just that. They said, it's less expensive for them to come to Charleston, South Carolina, go to the College of Charleston than it is for them to go in-state to Rutgers. So these kids are like, I'm gone. I'm going there. So it's funny that you said that that's the comparison. You said, I wanted to go away to school.
Yeah.
And I find that interesting because I had the similar situation, more of a force because I knew I had to get out. Was that you? Was that your parents? Was it a combination?
No, I'm pretty sure my mother cried constantly for days. Yeah. But I think that
knowing it was the best thing for you to leave, or like, I really wish he stayed.
They were willing to let me go do it. I don't remember them trying to talk me out of it or talk me into it. I think it was just within our family. My older cousin, who's like my sister, really, she went away to South Carolina. Her boyfriend, who became her husband, who I've known all this time, went to South Carolina.
The University of South Carolina?
University of South Carolina.
That's a big, I mean, Maryland's more like, at least in the stretch of like getting up to New Jersey, New York. South Carolina is not. It's a different, that's a big culture change.
Right. So that was sort of like my role model to say, okay, you can go away to school, be on your own. I wanted to be on my own. I wanted to be independent. And it was a big Italian family. So, the only way you can really be independent in a big Italian family is you have to leave town.
You got to get out of town.
You got to get out of town. Yeah.
I had a similar experience because I'm in Buffalo, New York.
Yeah.
And so in Buffalo, a lot of friends went to school in New England, in New York State. A lot of people stayed in around the area. We definitely spread out, but it was confined to the region. I'm going to the dirty South, come all the way down to Charleston, South Carolina. And it's just a unique, and like you said, my parents encouraged it. There's no force. It was encouraged to say, go someplace where you're not going to feel like you need to come home on the weekends because it's going to be very comfortable. So I say, grow when you're uncomfortable, right? And that was an important thing for me, to get out, to realize what it is to live on your own, which is obviously something that you experienced as well.
I think there was part of it that you're actually making me think about that I probably haven't thought about maybe ever.
Yeah.
Right? But I think part of it was that my parents had a little girl who only lived 3 days before me. And they were told they could never have children. So they became that great aunt and uncle that kids have that don't have any kids, that are willing to do whatever with their nieces and nephews. And then all of a sudden, here I am. My mom gets pregnant and she has me. So not only am I a son of an Italian mother, but I'm also the son of an Italian mother who never thought she could have children. So we grew up, we did not have a lot of material things, but if you could be spoiled with attention and all that, that was me. And I think until I had to go to school, if you asked me, I might have told you my name was My Anthony, because I was like, My Anthony is playing, My Anthony is breathing, My Anthony he looks so cute in his shirt, or My Anthony, My Anthony, My Anthony. And so it was really like, okay, I loved all that in some ways, and I knew I was loved, and I knew that, I was told, as lots of people in our generation were told, you can do anything you want. You got to just get a college education, better yourself. I want you to have a better life than I had. Oh, that was great. But I had to see what it was like not to be My Anthony somewhere else.
My Anthony had to go. But isn't that the sign of like great upbringing, great parents to allow your children and it's not easy. Trust me, I see it when you have kids. I have kids and my kids are younger. Yeah. But just to watch them go, drop them off at school, watch them walk in the direction and see this group of friends. And it might be in the morning, it might be like 7:15 in the morning. I feel it all the time. Yeah. And some days there's other things going on in your head, but it's
when we dropped my oldest daughter went to Maryland, undergrad and graduate. And when we dropped her at the dorm, she's 5 feet tall. When we dropped her at the dorm with all of her stuff and then went back to try to, help her get it all into the room, when I looked back in the rearview mirror and saw her standing next to her stuff, the stuff was taller than she was. Yeah. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm dropping this little girl off. After we got done with all that, friends of ours who still lived in Maryland said, hey, it's the first game at Ravens Stadium ever. And we have tickets and we have parking and we have box seats. And since you're going to be here, why don't you come? And after I dropped her off, it was so emotional for me. I went and got a crab cake and a Heineken. And I went back to their house and I just sat there and they're calling like, where are you? And I'm like, I'm not coming. And they said, well, okay, we have the ticket, we have the parking. I'm not coming. I can't. I'm not going. I just sat there by myself in the dark. I don't even know what I watched. I probably didn't even watch a game. Right. I don't know what I did.
Thought maybe. Yeah. Like almost like a meditation, but not even on purpose or something. So that happens. How was it like the next day? Like it's just got a little, not better because you're so happy for your daughter. Yeah. Like you started to move on a little bit. Sure. But you're still there. You can still talk to her. Yeah. Right. I'm asking because I'm going to be going through it. Not soon, but soon enough, I guess. Yeah. I mean, you just see them settle in, doing well, going, getting to class and all that. And I went back. I think we were in St. Louis at the time. We lived in St. Louis at the time. So I went back to St. Louis and I just said, you're going to call me every day. Yeah. Which she did for about a week and a half. And then she went, Dad, I'm not going to be kidnapped. I'm having a good time. And that was it. And then we went through it with number 2. Same way, University of Delaware, went through the same thing. And now our last daughter just moved out. She moved 1.2 miles from where we got live. One of them stayed nearby. Going to UNCC. Okay. Well, that works. I've had smaller experiences, and I think it's as much for the kids as it is for their father to take them to summer camp and to watch them. And I remember seeing them like run into their cabin or whatever. And it's, again, I'm going to see them in whether it's 4 weeks or 7 weeks. Right. It's still like, it hits you. Oh my gosh. And you get some feels going and you're like, what's going on? But it's good. It's really good because it teaches them. And then it teaches you and we're all going through it as well. There's a lot of stuff going on, and some of the stuff I want to come back and touch on, because I can see it. I see this gratefulness of like what you talked about from your early childhood of like where you even came from and how, here, I'm here. Like, wow, I'm going to smile today because what else am I going to do? Right. Why wouldn't I? Right. But we touched a little bit on the upbringing. And before, when you got in here, we were touching on this and I mentioned I'm from Buffalo, New York. And so I go way back and we're talking about Maryland. And obviously I'm going to draw the connection Buffalo and Maryland to Frank Reich. Yeah. And Houston Oilers come to town for a playoff game and Jim Kelly can't play. I'm getting emotional talking about it, right? And of course, later on, they end up losing the Super Bowl again. But that's another story for another day. Frank Reich's the quarterback. we're sitting on one side with my brother. My dad and my cousin are on the other side of the stadium. This is before cell phones. And it was freezing cold and we wanted to leave. We would have done anything to leave. If you would have come, tapped us on the shore and said, we're out of here, we're gone. Couldn't leave, couldn't get in touch with them because it's 80,000 seat stadium there. And so the whole plan was we're going to meet at the car after the game. So we couldn't leave, so we stayed. Frank Reich leads the greatest comeback in the history of the NFL. It was like nothing I've ever seen to that point and nothing I've seen since then. I've seen comebacks, but the stage, the atmosphere, the whole thing. Frank Reich was not the starting quarterback. He had won games for the Bills in the past. Jim Kelly always I don't think Jim Kelly is what he is without Frank Reich being by his side. You don't get that in today's NFL. If a backup quarterback's good enough and win some games, he's going to, Tom Brady, Jimmy Garoppolo, he's going to go start for the 49ers, right? Something's going to happen. That didn't happen. He was later on with the Panthers, so we're going to get to that. Frank Reich was obviously at Maryland, and remember the story comes out, it's like, well, he led the greatest college comeback ever. This stuff doesn't happen by accident. There's stories, and we can dig into it a little bit deeper, but he never freaked out. He went in the locker room. He's like him and Marv Levy, another one. There's just some belief that they had that they're going to be okay. And that doesn't mean they're going to win, right? Some people get that twisted. They had this belief and, they ended up still losing the second half. But you do that enough times, you have enough belief, a couple of things bounce your way. They got a couple lucky breaks. There's down BB catches the ball, runs. Today's NFL, they would have seen, he stepped out of bounds by an inch. It wouldn't have counted. But that's the breaks, right? That's how Bills have been screwed many times before. But Frank Reich, Maryland, then he comes to Charlotte. Now he's a head coach. You've had interactions with him. I saw him speak at the Touchdown Club probably, 10 years ago. Yeah. And such a humble guy. He was he was a quarterback's coach for Peyton Manning. And he made jokes about how it's the easiest job in the world. If you're the quarterback coach for Peyton Manning, it's I don't have to do anything. But it would take someone like Frank Reich to be that humble about it. Anyway, I just think there's all these different connection points. Maryland, Buffalo, Frank Reich. Talk to me a little bit about Frank Reich.
Yeah, I think, for the he was not the starting quarterback in Maryland either. And I think I was in Las Vegas at the time at a convention. And they were playing Tennessee. And I thought, oh my gosh, what's going on with the game? So I turn it on and they're down, multiple touchdowns. Hopeless. Over. You think it's over.
Right, yeah.
And so I thought, I've got something to go do. I'm going to go do that, and then I'll check on him again. So I turn it back on, and all of a sudden, Maryland's scoring. I'm like, I got to find it. I got to go find some place to watch this game.
Yeah.
And there was no place to watch. I mean, they didn't even show that game anywhere. So I'm huddled around some broadcast of it somewhere, just listening to this thing, and it's all of a sudden, okay, it's another touchdown. Wait, another touchdown. Yeah. Wait a minute, another touchdown. And Tennessee's getting stopped and stopped and stopped. And it was just that momentum, was just that great feeling. And then, so later, when Frank Reich came to Charlotte, I was part of this little men's group that would meet one morning every couple of weeks. And it was a combination pray together, have a Bible study kind of thing, and just kind of catch up on life together. And Frank Reich came a couple of times, and he never mentioned any of that. I knew it well. And I told him about it, and he went, I forget what he said, something like, I've relived this many times with many fans, kind of thing. Sure, right? You can imagine, right? Yeah. And so, but what he actually did say, I don't think he would mind me saying it. I mean, it wasn't really confidential. He talked about teaching his kids how to win, but also how to lose. And he had a young family at the time, and he used Monopoly to kind of teach them how to lose gracefully as well as to win. And I thought that was pretty powerful. And so it was a great takeaway from that guy, and it just kind of showed you the kind of guy he is. And you probably would love to see him at Buffalo. I would love to see him at Maryland.
Yeah. The opportunities at both places. And they talked, and it's interesting because he didn't have maybe the background because he was in Philadelphia. That was after probably Maryland.
It was Philadelphia while he was
at Philadelphia.
I think it was either while at Philadelphia or right around in there somehow.
Yeah.
And then of course,
he was getting
Philadelphia went to the Super Bowl.
Right. Yeah. They go to the Super Bowl. It was a great year. Win the Super Bowl. He's interviewing with Buffalo. And the Bills this year are doing well, and they got a good program, and they have some. Yeah. And it might not have worked out because it might have been too, like you just said before, too much reliving the past. Indianapolis doesn't have that history with Buffalo. They were in the same division for a while with the Bills, but it's separate. They had their own identity. sometimes I wonder, you've seen it with Joe Gibbs going back to the Redskins. You saw it with Marv Levy coming back to be the general manager. You see it in a lot of different places. Like, well, if we go bring the past back to the future, back to the present, maybe we can have some of that again. And it's like,
it's the old, what got you here won't get you there kind of thing, right? I mean, it really is.
So I almost think it's like a blessing in a way that he got to go to his own place and form his own identity. And they had a game, I think it was last year, right? It was his first year. And they win for it.
Yeah.
And they win for it in a place in overtime, right?
Right.
That if they don't get it, there's a chance that they're going to, I think it was Houston too. It was like big game.
I mean, they could have just kicked the extra point.
Or punt, or just let's take the tie.
Right.
And he's leading his team as he knew, and people were blaming him and they were going after him. And that was the beginning of their streak.
Yeah.
And it was like, he knew it doesn't matter what all these outside forces and all ESPN and all these fans or whatever. Right. He's making a decision based on what he knows is going to help him and his team.
Doesn't it make you think that a guy like Frank Reich, when he went into those Maryland huddles, those Buffalo huddles, and when he said in Indianapolis, we're going for it. I mean, doesn't that just say to people, we're winners. We can win.
Yeah.
We're not settling. There's a status, when you look at results, you can see, like, if you look at results over time, there's just a little bar graph of little ups and downs of results over time. If you settle for the status quo, you get what you have. It might be a little better sometime, a little worse sometime, but you get what you have. And I think what he said is, no, there's something better out there to go for than just what we have. Right. And now everybody was writing him off because Luck retires.
Right.
And here they are.
Here they are again.
Jacoby Brissett, right? I mean,
At what point do you stop counting those types of people out?
Yeah.
And they might not win. And that's the thing. So there's going to be people waiting. He's going to lose eventually. He's going to lose again. And he'll have a bad year. If he's there long enough, he's going to have bad years. That's just inevitable, like you're saying. But it's not going to be for lack of going for it, because he's, like you said, teaching his kids, he already knows how to lose. He can handle that. He can handle the losing. But with it, he's going to...
But he knows how to win.
Yeah, that's right.
He knows how to win. Yeah. If you live your life for the crowd, you're probably going to have an unfulfilled, miserable life. You really can't live for the crowd.
Well, that's someone you see, and you see fulfillment. You see it when he talks. You see it in his smile. You see it in his... He's not freaking out. He's never too high. He's never too... I mean, obviously, we're not there with him. We're not sitting in the conference room with him and talking about the next week's game. But, and I'm sure there's something there. There is that fulfillment. There is that smile that just... You have it. So you come in. You've come into the office. I've never not seen you... I'm sure there's times, right? We all have times, and there's tough moments. Life is not easy. Your kids going to college or really bad. That's not a bad thing, but like there's just moments in life, and it's tough.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But we've had struggles, sure. To be now, to be present in what it is that you're doing. And a lot of the things that we're talking, it's not about necessarily, you're helping yourself. You're doing things for you and your family and your business. But I see a lot of like helping other people. When you were a kid, when you go back, or like at the time that you can remember, were you always there helping, facilitating those types of things? Do you remember that?
I do remember family members asking me to be quiet.
Yeah.
Because I talked a lot, evidently. But I think I was always one of those people that sort of was out in front of something, Not always in school, not always, but in a lot of situations. I was. But I think it's more from growing up in a family, and an extended family as well, where there were two things that were consistent for sure. One was that the kids were the focus. So my parents and my aunts and uncles would get together. Their entertainment on Saturday night was, not to go see a Broadway show. They didn't. That wasn't even on their horizon. Their entertainment was to get somebody's house, usually mine, and put the kids in the middle and watch them play games or play musical instruments or put on a play or, play sport later on, go watch us play sports or whatever all those things were, because the focus was on what can they do for us. And so I think that kind of builds a sense of family for sure, but it also builds a sense of thinking about others more than yourself. And I don't think I always get it right by any means. But if I do get it right, it probably goes back to that.
Yeah.
As much as anything.
Well, I say it a lot on this podcast when we're talking to people, there's a common theme. And it might not be all the time, like you were saying. Like in other situations, it wasn't the same. That's okay. It's that there was that upbringing, there was that experience, there was that situation. We were talking to a basketball coach, on a former, he coached at Ohio State and different, and Xavier and different places. And he recalls playing driveway basketball and wanting to call the plays.
Yeah.
So he's like, he can take it back. Like there's this thing that's just intrinsic. It's just who you are. And you're like, I was made to be a coach. I was pretty good at basketball, but not good enough to play. So I want to, and you have that same type of thing of helping other people out because it's what you're doing. And then when you can do it with that smile, that present moment, because you have to, because you can get lost in backwards and forwards and all that thing that we're talking about. It's like Frank Reich saying, we can think about the first half and how bad we were and all the mistakes we made and how we're probably going to lose and what's going to happen in the press conference and all this. This might be my last year in
right.
What's going to happen? And then you're like, no. It's just one play at a time. Let's get a score. Let's get the ball back. Let's get another score, like another touchdown. Next thing you know, you got people in Las Vegas looking for TVs, right? You're like, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, you see it when you look at people like that, you see it. I think a big part of it too comes from being grateful. And so if I feel like whatever's happened in my life is because I've done all these wonderful things and I'm a wonderful person and it's been all me, then I haven't been given anything. And if you haven't been given anything, then you're really not grateful for anything. But I always, particularly as I've gotten older, and I start thinking that I'm not nearly as good as I think I was, that so much of this was given to me. And when things are given to you, then you are grateful. And when you are grateful, then that grateful spirit comes out to others. I think that's one of the biggest things about living a good life, I think, is if you can live a life of gratefulness, it takes care of a lot of ego. It takes care of selfish motives. And again, I'm not perfect at it by any means, but I will default to being grateful. I may get in trouble in a lot of areas, but I will be defaulting into gratefulness, thinking that there's no way I could have built C12. In Charlotte. There's no way that I could have people willing to come and sit around a table that I lead who are trying to build successful businesses and try to honor God in the way they do it. That couldn't have been me.
Right. When you have the opportunity, and I think sometimes I just think about the time we live in. There's stuff going on. I get it. There's a negative culture, let's say. There's social media that can bring people down. There's mental health is a big topic right now because a lot of people are feeling it. Politics, there's a lot of polarizing topics. But you think back, you're like, well, what year would you have liked to have been alive? Like 1920, World War II? Like, go way back? Like, I get it. It's like, well, that's not reality. I get it. But at the same time, you can really place yourself in a good spot if you think about, man, what could have been? I think about like what some people my grandfather, and I talk about this a lot, like he would hustle. He would be out there. He would meet and build Imagine if he had microphones.
Right.
He can tell his story that his people that work for him could hear, that his grandson could hear, that other people, that type of stuff, or just business people, and get on and you see the positive in social media. And I get it, cell phones, everyone's on their phone. Well, think about the amazing tool that phone is. You like all of a sudden you can turn that into a grateful behavior. It can get cliche, I get it, but there's so many different things, like you said at the very beginning, of being grateful of, I'm here, aren't I? And it's going to knock you down. I mean, you're going to have bad times.
Yeah, I think for me, I want to try to capture the values and the beliefs and the good parts of my early life, that kind of builds all of us into who we are. I want to hold on to that. But I don't ever want to go back to another decade. I don't look back with that longing of, wow, I'd like to go. Things were so great then.
Did you though? Was there times in your life, like say your kids are, all of a sudden they're older?
Yeah.
There's like a minute to say, wow, I wish she was young again or something like that. Did you have those moments or was it always?
I think there's things I missed, they're grown. They have grandchildren. So Do I want them to be little again? No, I love my grandchildren.
Yeah, that's right. Right.
I don't want. I'm not looking to have little girls again. But do I miss some of the father-daughter stuff? Sure. But now I have this, right? So I don't ever want to. No, I can't remember ever seriously thinking I want to go back and relive this or relive that, because there's so much more ahead, right?
Yeah.
So there's
so much more right now.
Yeah, right now. Yeah. I mean, we've got a lot. We have a lot of joy right now in our lives to take advantage of.
It's awesome. You said something about, and obviously this is a very humble thing, and it's true, and you hear it a lot, but people live it. It's not you. You couldn't do it without all these different people around you. There's something I think about is that, and you've met Mitch Long before, you've heard about Mitch Long in our office, or even Shane Snively here in our office. And at some point, you have to realize that you are actually pretty good at what you do. You are a good facilitator. You do help people. You're able to talk to people. You can sell. You can encourage someone to come for all the right reasons, of course, not manipulation. There is that point that I think in people's careers that they have to realize that they know what they're talking about. That's a hard thing, though, I think, because it's like sometimes you can place yourself and say, it's not me, and it's not. And I get it. And it's all these different people around you. And you can say, it's the team, and that's perfect, and that's great. But sometimes when there's a table of people and you speak, people listen. Was there that moment?
That's because I'm in control of lunch.
That's right. That's it.
They listen because it's like they're waiting to hear about lunch.
Italian family. It's like, hold on, where's the food? Right.
Hang on.
Yeah.
No, you know what I think? It's a tension that we live in, and I've been leading these groups now for 15 years, and so I've had to kind of figure out this tension, and I've had some really smart people to talk to about it. People, guys who I really respect. And I think what it boils down to is this. We try to get, all of us, we should try to be the best we can at whatever we're trying to do, right? So we should be the best we can, learn the best learning, apply that learning, learn from that, make adjustments, keep getting better and better and better, but recognize that those outcomes are not our outcomes. So for me, it springs from a faith in God. So what I say is, I'm going to try to be obedient. I'm going to try and be the best C12 managing chair I can be. I'm going to try to be the best dad. I'm going to try to be the best grandfather, the best husband. I'm going to try to be that best person I can be. I know that I'm going to fall short all the time, but I'm going to try to be that person. How it works out is not up to me. My job is to do my job. And then the outcome is the outcome. Now, does that mean I don't want good outcomes? Sure, I do. Does that mean I don't measure outcomes? Sure, I do. Right? But whether we have 8 people around the table or 12 or 5, if I'm doing my best, then I accept that outcome as that outcome right then and there. The next day when I wake up, I'm going to try to add another person to that table. Or I'm going to try and facilitate it better.
Whatever the next thing is you have to do.
Whatever the next thing is, I'm going to try and do it as best as I can. There's no excuse
built in there.
No. There's no excuse, but there's very little credit. Because the most credit I can take is that I'm doing the best I can. I don't take credit for...
But you're holding yourself accountable.
I am.
So I'm not, because you said measure, you said that word a few times. It's not even if you never measured it, even if you couldn't measure it and you didn't understand numbers, you would still hold yourself accountable because you would know that you didn't do all you could have done to be better that day. Right. To say, I should have read more today. I should have had that conversation with that person today. I should have thought more about how do I strategize to even get in front of them. It's not going to talk to the next person, maybe. It's thinking about who am I going to talk to? Where is that going to be? Those types of things.
And when your parents, like your parents, encouraged you to go out and try and do, my parents did the same, right? So when your parents tell you that you can be anything you want if you try and if you learn and if you know, all those things. So the blessing and the curse is I feel like I've been kind of ingrained with the idea that all of us can be the best we can be if we just work hard at it and if we work smart at it. On the other hand, you're never done. You know, you can always be, if somebody tells you can always be better, you can always be better. And so you're never done. So that's kind of the two-sided coin. You never feel like you're done with anything, but you also work hard to try to get better. And then again, you say, well, look, I mean, when somebody gives you something valuable, it's up to us to take care of it, right? When someone gives you something and you treasure it, you want to take care of it. It can be people, kids, wives, right? It can be things that are important to you, whatever those things are. So I feel like this was something that I didn't do, that I've worked to get better at it, but it was still given to me. And so therefore, it motivates me to keep getting better at it and to take good care of it.
Yeah. Being that best version of yourself, right?
Right.
And there's a lot of talk about goals. Where are you going? What's your North Star? All these different things. And I'm not saying that they're bad, because I think you said you have to measure. Where are we going? What's the target here? Those types of things.
Right.
But just like you said, if your ultimate is to say the best version of myself and going to be better than I was, don't compare myself to this person or that person, compare myself to what I was yesterday, right? I mean, that's in many ways what you're just moving forward little by little in a fast-moving, fast-paced environment that we live in today. You have kids, you've seen it. They're like, need it right now. I need the answer. I need the number. And everyone can get caught up in that stuff. You watch, there's sports on, and it's like immediate. Who won, who lost? And a lot of times we draw parallels between sports. We've already done it today. But a lot of times it's just this ongoing thing. And I think if we pulled an athlete in here today who played in the football game, maybe it'd be Frank Reich or one of his wide receivers or one of his players today, and it's all learning experience. Yeah, the Super Bowls and all that stuff. Frank Reich isn't less of a person because he lost 4 Super Bowls. Right? I mean, maybe he's better for it. Who knows? Yeah. But it's that ongoing.
He might like to change that, though.
Yeah, I think we should have won a couple of those. But, oh man, we're gonna have to be back.
But to your point, I think it's this idea of being the best version of ourselves and being the best we can, and how we get to where we are. There's just something about that it drives us to be who we are. If you took an athlete today, I mean, think about some of the interviews. Think about the golf interviews when they pull a golfer in after they finish their round, right? And they say, "How did it go today?" They never talk about their score. They always talk about their techniques. Mm-hmm. I hit my irons pretty well today. Hit some greens, missed some fairways. It's never about their competition against the other golfers. I shouldn't say never, but I don't remember any. I remember it's always about how well they performed themselves, and then whether they won or not, whether the ball went in the cup or not. They read the greens. I read the greens well today. I stroked the ball well today. I didn't get all the outcomes I wanted, but I did my job well.
That's
guys talk
great.
About performance.
No, you're right. And they can remember it. Like you listen like a Tiger Woods. He's like, on number 7, I hit and you're like, that was 3 hours ago.
Yeah.
I forgot what
last
we did.
year. They'll talk about when I played this hole.
Yeah, the wind was coming at 15 miles an hour. You're like, what are you talking about? Yeah, but you're right, because you're so laser focused on it. I think what's interesting is obviously we talk about this and we can go back and forth on being the best version and thinking through stuff. But a lot of times you hear it so much that I think I know it happens, right? It's both ways. That could just be the thing we tell ourselves. It's almost like an excuse. If you say it enough times, you now believe whatever it is that you're saying, and you've created the excuse to say, I tried my best. And I tried my best today. Well, did you really? And I guess it was last year, I took my kids to see Hamilton in Chicago. Yeah. And my daughter it was awesome. It was a great experience.
Right.
And so we spent a lot of time and read about it. Leslie Odom Jr., who played Aaron Burr in the original cast, he has a book and he talks about like becoming an actor. And he goes out, and I think it was his uncle. And we can look back in the book. We think it's his uncle. And he's like, sits down. He's like, I want to meet you for coffee. It's Leslie Odom Jr. said. And he said, okay, let's meet. So he's like, I want to quit. He's like, okay, totally. We'll quit. We'll move on to the next thing. But it's got one question for you. Have you tried today? And he's got all mad. He's like, what are you talking about? Have I tried today? Of course I've tried. I've done. He's like, how many people did you call to get, to try to get a new part? Stop lying to yourself. So he was believing his own stuff, that he was like, I'm working hard. I've done everything I needed to do. I'm not getting the outcome. So it kind of fits your story of what you're saying, but he wasn't doing it because he was saying it so much that he needed someone else to say it. He's like, if you want to quit, we'll still quit. I just have to ask you this one question. And it took someone to say, man, and he got mad and he was frustrated by it. He's like, whatever, and left. And, then, rest is history. And, he becomes one of the lead characters in one of the greatest plays in the last probably 10, 20 years and then takes off, right? But you hear what I'm saying? Like there's this, is that something we just tell ourselves? Or is that where someone like you comes in to say, let me help you with that? Because this is what you're telling yourself, but you're close. Let's keep talking.
Yeah, I think it goes back to, we have to do the deal. We have to do our part. And so that's where the metrics come in. The metrics come in for activity. So like in your story, they said, how many people did you call today? Right. So it's the same, no matter where we're looking for performance, it boils down to the idea of what activity and how well did you do it today to look towards the results you wanted to get. Because even though we can say we did our best today, results still matter. And so that's where that tension comes back again. It comes back around again. Like I've done my best, and it hasn't worked. Well, is that a door that's closing? Are you doing it well? Are you doing it often enough? If we're looking for good performance and we're results oriented, but we also know that activity counts and obedience counts, then we live it. This is the tension we live in all the time, right? This is where we live. And so we have to kind of reconcile this somehow, because otherwise we'll burn out. So we have to be able to lay our head down at night and say, okay, I didn't get it all right. I didn't get all the outcomes I wanted. I learned some things from this. I got some outcomes maybe I wanted. I can put my head down tonight and I'll start again tomorrow. And I think if we can't do that, then the two things happen to us. One, we burn out, or we fall into the noise category and we're just out there just making a lot of noise doing nothing.
You said burnout, and that's a good word, because if you learn and you think and you work and you just love what you do all the time, you just can keep going. It's not the monotonous tasks anymore. There is that. And it's like, hey, how can I avoid that? Well, you can work with a team or whatever. But if you're constantly learning and thinking, like, can you just keep going? And then just not, it's like, oh, it's 2 a.m, time to go to bed.
You can catch yourself doing that if you're not careful, right? And so that's where you need accountability, and you need somebody to say, you know what, that's enough for now. You need to do something different. So we actually do a thing, because most of the people I hang with every day doing C12, they're like that.
Yeah, high performers.
They love what they do. They're good performers.
Demanding on themselves, right?
They're very self-demanding, self-examining. How am I doing? How did I do today? Am I doing a good job? What's a good job look like? Did I do enough? Did I do enough? Did I do enough? Right? Over and over. And so what we do is we actually talk a lot about diligence. And diligence is a great concept, because most people think about diligence and they think it's working hard. Have you been diligent with that? Well, I put in 14 hours. Well, was that diligent or was that 14 hours? Right? So diligence is actually giving the right amount of energy, focus, and resources that's required. No less, but also no more. And for you to have a more balanced, whatever that really means, life, you have to be diligent across the areas of your life. So what does diligent look like as a husband? What does being diligent look like as a father, a grandfather, a friend, a follower of God? What does that look like to be diligent? And then what does it look like to be diligent in my job at work? What does that look like? And if you give everything the right amount of what's required, you should be able to say, I have all the time I need to do everything I'm supposed to do today. The problem is no one ever gets that exactly right. And so we're always kind of bouncing around, and we're never really diligent in everything, because that's perfection and we're not perfect. So we kind of mess around with it a little bit. But if we look at it that way, we have a lot better chance than just saying, I just have to work really hard. Because in our meetings, when we look at how diligent we've been across our life, and everyone sits there and realizes they've missed the boat someplace, the one thing that we know is not going to happen is one of our CEOs is not going to come in and say, I'm too rested. I need to go to work.
Right.
No, I'm too fit. I got to stop working out so much. Or I need to have some ice cream. My nutrition is just too high, right? I'm staying home too much. I'm spending too much time with my kids. I mean, those are things that nobody around that table has ever said that I can remember in 15 years. So it's more like, I need you guys to hold me accountable because I'm at the office too much, or I'm on the job site too much, or I haven't worked out. I can't remember the last time I worked out, right? I need to get on some kind of a program. I need to lose 30 pounds. I mean, when you have a member that says they need to lose 30 pounds, unless they're really, really big, that's a lot of weight. And so it's the idea of building accountability around that to help us be more diligent across the areas of our lives, not just working hard or putting all of our energy into just one area.
Well, that's an important topic because you started with how much I spent 14 hours on that. And there's a lot of numbers you can get it in when you work out. How many reps how much weight did you put up? Right. How many likes did you get on Instagram? How many this? Hold on a second. That's just a number, right? How many points did you score? But what was what happened? Because you could be disguising stuff. You're disguising what actually took place. It's because it's not going to work every time like that.
You can go to the gym and spend an hour there, but if you don't do the reps and if you don't do them with the proper form,
right,
you're not maxing your time there, right? It's like the saying, I don't remember who said this, but it's like, you can go sit in your garage all day, but you're still not a car.
Right.
You know what
That's
I mean?
Great.
You can go sit someplace, you can go be somewhere, but if you're just there, you're not getting it done.
Yeah. And then there's the point of, okay, so you were going to the gym. You're doing curls and you have the wrong form and your shoulders are sore. You're like, why are your shoulders sore? You're doing it wrong. We can go get mad at yourself and be like, I'm never going to do it again because I can't do it. Or you give yourself a break because, like you said, you're not perfect. That's okay. Right. Well, now you know that you don't have proper form. Right. So let's get a trainer or I'll go with you next time. So it's accountability to yourself to say and being okay with it. It might not happen right away. And that's a very basic example to say, maybe I need some help here. And then allowing yourself to have that help. So if you're going to spend time, if I had an issue early on, if I left the office, I felt like, what are people here going to think? Yeah. That I'm not working. I'm always working. I'm always thinking about it. It might not be working specifically on a specific task. But if you want the best version of what I've got to offer, I need to walk. I need to exercise. I need to be with my family. I need to read. I need to think. I need to ponder. I need to do all of these things to say, that's what I need to do. I know it. So I've given myself the time. That's important. I do these types of things. If I'm going to sit on a podcast for 2 hours, I'm allowed, because that's 2 hours in the day. That's a long time. But I know it's the best thing for our company. It's the best thing for myself. It's the best thing for you. It's the best thing for the people that might hear it. So, but you have to give yourself the time. It's no different than if someone's going to go to C12, you're saying, hold on a second. Because Shane Snively is a member of part of C12. And I think it's the first Tuesday of the month. He's not here. He's gone. So sometimes he'll show up right before like 7:38, and then he's maybe come back around 4:35 or something like that. That's a lot to take a high performer, someone who's got maybe very large company, a lot of people that he needs to be there for, and they remove themselves from that situation and stick themselves at a location that no one else, right? No one knows about. That's a big thing to ask for people. Right. But the person that's allow themselves to do that, that's pretty great. I mean, I see that that they are going to say, "Oh no, this is a non-negotiable. This is where I'm going to be." Is there a bit is it hard to find that early on to say, no, I don't want to do that?
Oh yeah, I think that's time is the biggest objection you'll hear to somebody not coming to a C12 group. I don't have time to spend that much time doing that. And I think, so the easy response to that is usually, so if you don't, if you want things to change, but you don't invest any time in changing them, how are they going to change? If you don't take this time deliberately to step away from the business, but still be all about the business. I mean, the guys don't go there and talk about the Panthers, So I think we're just not in the office. We're just away from the distractions and the day-to-day of the office so that they can actually think more strategically about the business. And if you don't do it then, show me where else you do it. If you're doing it someplace else, fine.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be C12. It could be anywhere else.
Show me that show me on your calendar where you're doing that. But the sad state of affairs is almost no one's doing that.
Yeah. The office is interesting, and we could study this and talk about it. I mean, the offices were built long ago to be there from a certain time period because that was the formula that we had. No different than like what public schooling what it was originally designed for. So then we just fall into these traps, say you have to go to your office between these hours and those hours. No doubt, some people have to be there because that's where the button they have to push is, for example. Use that just very basically. But if you're running a business and you're building a business, that doesn't mean you have to be sitting there and counting the hours. And not that they're counting the hours go by fast. You have the opportunity to go and find an organization like a C12. And it doesn't, if someone said to you, listen, Tony, I think C12 is great. I like this other, that's perfect. You're not in it.
I would say you got the second best one.
That's right. That's right. We're being honest here, right? Yeah.
No, that's true. I mean, yeah.
Or there's other ways to do it. Someone say,
other ways to do it. Yeah.
But that is allowing oneself to give themselves permission to get out.
Yeah. And there's some tension in that, right? I remember reading a book a long time ago. It was the guy who started Avis Rent-A-Car, or either that or he was the guy who grew it. And he had a thing where he said all CEOs have like kind of their pet peeve things, right? So his was designated parking places. He would say, if you're so important, show up early and you'll get to park near the building, right? So there's that part of it where you kind of have to set standards for behavior. But on the other hand, you do have to recognize that people can perform in different ways. And I love the fact that there's more and more people, working out of their homes, working virtually. Yeah. We lose some things, but we gain some things. Right. Just like your example of the phone. It's a great tool, yep, or it's a disease, one or the other, right? Yeah. And it's up to us.
Yeah.
We can make it one or the other. Yeah.
Well, and that comes down to that individual to say, what am I going to do with it while I'm on it? Because, okay, now you have you read any book in the world on your phone. Right. You can communicate with anyone in the world from your phone. You could also play Candy Crush for tour. That was the game, some years ago.
Well, now you're bringing my Aunt Rosemary into it. I don't think that's a good idea.
But it's amazing why are you always on your phone? That stuff ages up. And here we go, and say Facebook started, now we get off track, but Facebook started in college. Right. And now it's 60 plus network. I mean, anyone can be on it, but it's primarily, there's a lot of people 60 plus that are on it.
Because the younger people are always looking for something newer.
Something new. TikTok. Are you on TikTok?
Yeah. No.
Well, we're going to have to do that. So, okay. I mean, it's just amazing. It's like we're talking about before.
I have Kaz CM on.
That's it. There you go. You're perfect. That's right.
That's it. I should ask you if I'm on TikTok.
Yeah, so maybe soon. If we get you guys dancing and lip syncing, I think then we're at that next level.
Well, we did the goat yoga.
The goat yoga.
We did do the goat yoga video.
Scott's got 4 goats at his house because he had to kill, right? It was all the weeds I think he had to kill. And so then goats have just become a big thing in our office right now.
Evidently.
I want to go back a little bit because I was like, okay, so Tony's at C12. Been there for 15 years. But you're in college, so there's a little time in between that we've missed so far. And I know Black & Decker stands out. And I think that was maybe one of your key positions or key companies that you were at.
Quaker State was the first one, right out of college.
Right out of college.
Yeah, 21 years old. Here I am. Yeah.
Just show up and what do you want me to do?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I do know that I went to like a week of training at the refinery and then came back.
Where is this? This is Philly?
I was in Baltimore.
Okay.
Yeah, I was hired by the Baltimore office of Quaker State Corporation, and they sent me to Pennsylvania went to the home office, went to the refinery, and spent a week doing that. Rode with sales guys for about 3 weeks or so. And then, they gave me a car, a briefcase, and said, go get them. Go get them, champ. And the very first call I called on, I'm sure they're not in business, so it doesn't matter whether I say their name or not. But the very first one I called on was a small hardware store south of Annapolis. And I walked in and the guy was drunk. And this was like 9 o'clock in the morning. And I'm thinking, wait a second.
Yeah.
How much did I pay for college again?
Yeah.
And I walk in and he goes, oh, and I had a tie on. Quaker State was suit and tie no matter what, right? And I walk in and he looks at me and he goes, college boy, huh? And I went, oh man, this is not going anywhere. Gets in a fight his first day, gets thrown out of the gets thrown out of the company his very first day. So, but yeah, that was my first job. That was my first company. I was with them for 15 years.
Well, I would imagine then you're tracking. You're talking about measuring. Yeah. I'm sure everything you did was measured. Oh, yeah. How many calls did you go on?
I had to write them down and send them in with notes. You know, I mean, it was like sales reporting, daily sales reporting. And I had to call orders in that I would take. I would go to a payphone at the time.
So did you work out of your car?
Office. I worked out of my car and my home, and we had an office. And originally, we had to drive. Where my territory was 45 minutes from the office. So I drove to the office and had to be there by 8 o'clock every morning. And then I had to go there at the end of the day because we had one sales guy who was not performing, and the manager made us all do the same thing. So finally, one day I just said, you know, that's an hour and a half easy, not counting traffic, that you're killing my time because this guy's not selling enough motor oil, you know. So, and I was probably, 22 years old at the time. And the guy looked at me, and I wasn't sure if he was going to say something, one good or bad. And he said, you know what? You're right. He said, you don't have to come in anymore except on Monday mornings. And so I started just starting from the apartment and ending the day at the apartment in Glen Burnie, which was an apartment that you had to stand on a chair to see out the window. I mean, it was a basement apartment for a few $100s a month, paying off student loans, selling motor oil.
Yeah. But you had to go through those things in the sales cycle until you spoke up, until you said something. Right. But even if you said something, well, now it's really on you. Now you better sell. Like, oh, you're the guy that said you didn't have to come in every day, but now you're slacking off. So now what's up?
Right. That's exactly right.
Yeah. So you like almost set yourself up to be, we're watching you now.
Yeah. And I do remember that after the first few months, the New Jersey office, which was really the head office for the East, said, are you sure that this Tennaro kid's going to make it? And my local manager and that regional manager didn't get along. And that's really what probably saved my job, because he said, you're not telling me who to hire and who not to hire.
So you need it there. Wow.
And then after that, there was a large hardware chain. They started buying truckloads of motor oil, and all of a sudden, I was okay again.
Things started happening. Yeah. But that experience, clearly going through that is what's needed. Because you can't just wake up one day and run a C12, right? You need to go through all of this stuff that you have to go through. So when does Black & Decker appear on your resume?
After 15 years of Quaker State.
Okay.
And the last real job I had with Quaker State was I ran the independent distributor network. So I had been a direct sales guy. I had managed distributor networks. And then my last real job was to get promoted back to the home office in Oil City, Pennsylvania, to lead the distributor network. At that time, it was called Worldwide, but it was mostly the United States. Quaker State didn't have large, international distribution. So I did that, and then ended up going to Black & Decker and running the automotive sales division for Black & Decker for 5 years, and then went into smaller companies. And I loved smaller companies. I was actually...
Because those are two big companies you were at.
They were big companies. Yeah, they were big companies. Black & Decker
with an entrepreneurial kind of feel to what you were doing, though.
It was not helpful all the time.
It's kind of like going against the grain a little bit for yourself, which I had
it was
decided.
A little countercultural.
Which makes sense. Some people could go to a Black & Decker and be the Black & Decker jersey or Quaker State jersey and everything. It's all this, it's all that. And you see that a lot, and it's very hard. And then the layoff happens. You're like, now what do I do?
Right.
I tend to think that if you can work for those large companies, that's fine. But if inside, I had that. I was not like fighting the system, but I was not like with that system. Right. Like I would go off on my own. I don't, or with people that had like-mindedness of what else are we thinking about? Yeah. You get that entrepreneurial, you start seeing it, you start believing it. You're like, I want to see what this is that I got going on right now, which is clearly what you had going on. Yeah. So you go to Black & Decker. Was there a point where you're like, or did you always know that I want to be doing something like, no,
not even close. Not even close. The automotive sales division was a small division for Black & Decker compared to construction and that kind of thing. And so we were building that. We built a great team. We had a totally different culture. We had different sayings. And what ended up happening was Black & Decker ended up buying a company called Emhart, which was their same size. They had a plan to divest a variety of businesses, didn't work out. So the debt load was incredible, and there was almost no resources for an automotive sales division to hire people to do things. So one of the things we did was we went to one of these companies that were part of the acquisition for Black & Decker and said, we can be your sales force. You have independent reps right now, but we can be your sales force. Why don't you pay us to sell your products? And in some areas, we hired their reps where we couldn't afford to put a direct person. And in some areas, we became their direct sales force. And that's how we were able to grow and add people and
Sales.
grow add sales. And we were very profitable part of the company. So that was all good. But at some point, it just was too much of a battle to fight.
Yeah.
It was just too much of you're just not going to get anything here. And so they just came to me and said, we're going to eliminate your job. So
there you go.
I said, well, good. I guess it's good because I've gone and talked to a lot of people about how this is going to be a great resurgence of Black & Decker in the automotive space. And we're not getting any resources or new products or things to do it. So I really feel like my reputation is at stake anyway. And
Right.
so then we went to some small companies and had a great time with those, and then found C12.
You say we found these companies. Are you talking about Sheila?
I am.
And yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Sheila's your wife, so
Sheila is my wife. Yeah. And that's a good thing. That's a really good thing. She
works with you at C12.
She does now, yeah. So now there's no part of my life that she doesn't control.
That's right.
Before, at least I had C12, I could go hide.
I enjoy when you talk about it because you've done it multiple times, and it's part of who you are. When we did this, we did that. And here we are at C12 together. Working side by side, different roles, different ways of doing things, possibly. Different interactions we might have on a daily basis. Yeah. So my wife doesn't work with me, but I wouldn't be where I am now without her. She'll call me out. She's good at it. It hurts sometimes when you get called out. Your best friend can call you out, whoever that is, like, what are you doing, like this or that. It doesn't even have to be work related. It could be whatever that is, just a reminder. It's like kind of like to the point. And Sheila obviously probably can do that with you, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's not a problem.
Right.
But she also is really encouraging. And, when you're starting something, encouragement is critical. And in the beginning, she's a really high-powered sales executive type person. I mean, and so her personality is, way out there, and it works well now as we do things together. But she would say that this is exactly what I should do because of all the things that happened up to that point. So when I went and said to her, look, here's the C12 thing, you know about it, but now we're getting really serious about it. She said, I think this is exactly what you should do next. Not because you've been successful every place else, but because you haven't always been successful. And I think that was one of the real things, is that for me to be able to look at a CEO in the face before, earlier on, I would have said, well, I'll help this person all I can. We'll figure out what we can do. We'll bring resources around it. But this person's an idiot. How could you get yourself in that spot? But then when you end up in tough spots, then you say, well, you know what? I am that idiot. I mean, I've been in that some spot like that. And so there's a whole different level of understanding that you can bring to the role.
Yeah.
And that was good. And Sheila was the one who told me that. She was the one who said, it's not
the puzzle
just
together for you.
Yeah, it's just not your successes. It's also some of the places that haven't worked out well that now you can probably be a really great C12 chair.
You've been there before.
Yeah. And so that was really good. And when we were building it, if we had an empty seat around our table, she would say, well, God's got the right person for that seat. The person you think should join is not that person. There's somebody else. And she was really good about that.
Keeping you going.
Yeah.
Get up and who you're going to go meet today and talk to. Yeah.
Yeah. And now that she works in the business, she's that person that members like to talk to. Like for this, to confirm today, if I was going to confirm it, I probably would have sent you a text message that said, today, 11 o'clock, podcast, see you then, right? Sheila's message would be, Eric, Tony's so excited to come to you.
That's right. You need that. Yeah.
I hope you have coffee because he's had a slow morning, whatever. Right. It's like this whole long thing. And she'll say to members, you're going to go to lunch and you're going to be at this place. Try the club sandwich. I mean, she'll just, she's just a natural person for that. And it adds a level of value to their relationship. It adds a level of value that I'm just not that person. I'm just not that. I'm not a small talk person. Sheila carries me in all those kinds of situations.
I've seen her come in here. I mean, before I ever knew who she was when she was early on.
Yeah.
And who is that? Very dynamic person just came through here and then I think she walked in one day, introduced herself and of course, then we start talking about Italy, right? So that happened pretty quick because she was asking questions and I don't know what it was. I think my mom's painting's hanging on the wall and what's her influences. And I was just telling her and she has this Italian series and all of a sudden, there you go. And I think you guys just went to Italy, if I'm not mistaken, last summer.
It was our second trip.
Yeah. And from what I could tell when I've talked to you and talked to her about it, it's like, that's where we want to go. We want to go to Italy.
Yeah. It was both times we made life-changing decisions. It's been really interesting. The first time we went is when Sheila ended up leaving her company job and coming to work at C12.
So you made it while there?
When we came back.
So after having that time away.
It just was right there in our face that, we need to.
What was she doing before?
She was running independent rep network, selling home decor products for a company. And she has been in that industry for a long time, Regal Ware and Blythe candles and all kinds of stuff. So that's her thing. And she was calling on the largest retailers in the country, really at their home offices, making these big deck presentations of how they could reorganize their shelves and get the most profit. I taught her everything she knows.
That's right, of course.
And then she doesn't hear this podcast, does she?
No,
okay,
good. She's cut
so that's good. So, but yeah, she's really good at that. She's really good at that. And it was like I just don't want to. There's some other circumstances that weren't worth getting into with her company that just weren't good. And she just said, I just want to do something
to get to that. It's kind of like we were talking about before.
There's something here. There's something more valuable we could be doing here.
Sometimes you got to get out of your environment, your own head, your own whatever, and think and whatever, and you don't know. And then it snap. There it is. Like, this is the move to make. And now she's there. And I mean, from what I can tell, your C12 is growing. A lot of conversations. We've communicated with a lot of people. We've done some work in the videos and other people that are inside of C12 doing some work with them, marketing side. It's always a positive experience when talking about you, Sheila, and C12. And I don't just say that because you're here today. Maybe they just say it when we're there. I don't know. But you can just tell that it makes a difference. And again, there's that transition to C12 makes a difference. But it's just the truth. It's a lot of times we see it. It drives me nuts because we've talked about big companies and I've been a part of big companies and I see a lot of corporate speak and, you see the executives, the CEOs, whoever that is, checking boxes, doing things and saying these lines and talking about customer service. And I talked to Mitch, I'd mentioned before, we talked about customer service a lot. And you can't just say the word customer service. And that doesn't mean you have good customer service. Just because you sat next to me at a corporate dinner doesn't mean that we have a relationship now. Because I know what you were doing and I know your questions were canned and I know it wasn't genuine and all that kind of stuff. But when you say these types of lines and you actually mean it, wow, because it's like these lines don't have to be disingenuous. They don't have to be a cliche that people just say. They can actually be a cliche that actually, oh, wow, you live by it. And I see that with C12 because I'm around it because Shane's there and he talks about it, is very positive. And it doesn't mean everyone who's been to C12 has had an incredible experience. I'm sure there's people who haven't, but that's life. And thank goodness there's a lot of people in the world to continue to talk to. But that is an important piece of it. So when you say it makes a difference, it actually has to make a difference or then you're just lying.
Yeah, we talked about time and how people will either give their time to come and do that or not. But the one thing for sure is that if they're not getting value, CEOs are not going to dedicate that time for long, so that the fact that they come every month. Shane comes every second Tuesday. We have guys come every second Thursday, every third Thursday, every third Wednesday. We're starting a new group at Carmel Country Club that's meeting this Friday. We're not always great at managing it, but we're all people like that are very guarded about how they invest their time. If they don't see a difference happening, they're going to stop coming. And the difference, but I think that what's interesting is 80% or so of the people who join C12 join for business counsel and business advice. But it doesn't take long before we start talking about diligence across all areas of their life. And what we hear often from the spouses of C12 is that C12 has made a difference at home. It's made a difference in their marriage. We've had people say, since my husband joined C12, this is the best year of our marriage. And they start to cry. And that, I mean, if that doesn't get you, if you're a member or you're a chair and that doesn't grab you, then, you need to go get a checkup, man, because something's wrong with your heart.
Right.
Right. So there is something about that members feel, they see it.
Mm-hmm. You then feel it because
which is
there's
great.
got to be days what am I doing? This isn't working and this issue and that issue and who knows, I'm not feeling good today. I got a cold, whatever. You hear that, that's got to be like, man, this is why I love this. I mean, you have to feel, if a spouse comes in, it's not even the person, or it's not just me saying what I've heard before. And that's good too, to hear those positive things. To have the spouse or a kid or someone else, or you see that difference, they walk in, they lost the 30 pounds because of you. Not because of you, because of them, but because of the support and all that.
Because of what the resource they have.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think I'll tease members at sometimes because they'll say, well, gosh, it's hard for me to even find the time. I really shouldn't be here today, things like that. And I usually have a good time with it. And I'll say to them, well, I woke up this morning thinking I'm too busy to come here. And then I realized this is what I do for a living.
Right.
So I better show up.
Right.
But, we all can think about all the things we need to do and all the things we could be doing instead of what we're doing. The idea is to be objective enough to say, where am I getting the most value today? And the urgent, it is a cliche that the urgent has such a push on the significant that if we don't see immediate results, if we don't see immediate returns, we have a tendency to think, well, okay, I that's great. I'll start that soon. As soon as I do these 5 things. And then those 5 things become 5 more things, become 5 more things. And the significant never starts, And so I think by being in that group at least once a month, and then when I meet with them between meetings, one-on-one, there's a reminder of the significance. And we want that. I think as people, we want to be significant. We want to be part of something greater than ourselves. I mean, I think that's sports fans, that's organizations that we belong to, how we go back and look at our family. And we'll say, we're part of this family. We're part of this fan base. We're part of this alumni association. We're part of this, whatever all those things are, because we want to be a part of something bigger than ourselves. We want to have meaning. We want to have significance. And all those things, other than family, those other things are great, but they're not nearly as important as what we do every day in finding significance in that with our family, with our businesses, with our relationship.
It allows you to, I think, when I had kids, it allows you to grow too, because you want to get outside your head real quick, wake up one morning and your kid's sick. And you might have some stuff going on. Those don't matter anymore. So your brain doesn't matter. And you're like, oh, not that you feel good, you're worried about your child. You want to help your child. You want to do those things, but all those other things. So if you want to get outside your own head, go help somebody else out. And it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't just have to be your kid. It could be someone in your company. It could be the business. It could be something else. It could be a friend, a colleague, or what have you. I mean, he's talked about that when he talked about the time he started to meet you and you guys came together and he was having kids and he was having twins. And, his oldest daughter had a twin and didn't have a twin. And had a really hard time and was in a really bad place. And it's like, well, he knew you. And there was obviously different connections in these different places that you guys were in the same circles, let's say. But there was this time and you were there for him. And it was a strange occurrence because he was supposed to meet me for coffee that day. And they ended up in the hospital and she was giving birth. And I thought, okay, I've been stood up. Right. And I thought, well, I'm going to call this guy and figure out,
does he really want to talk about anything or not? So I call him and he answers the phone and he said, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, but I'm at the hospital. My wife is giving birth. And I went, wow, congratulations. And then he said, yeah, we just lost one. And I went, oh my gosh. And I just said, can I pray for you? And we prayed over the phone. And then I went home. I just said, I'm done. I'm not doing anything else right now. I went home. I sat at our kitchen counter. I can still see myself sitting there saying, God, what in the world are you doing? Why would you put an unskilled, uneducated in that arena? Why would you put me? I'm not a pastor. I'm not a caregiver. I'm not a counselor. I'm not any of those things. Why in the world would you put me on the phone when he has just lost a child? And I cried. I could get teary-eyed right now again. Just thinking about it. And that was part. Yes, it was part of our relationship, and we have a great relationship now for many years. But I actually think it was part of my learning to think that, going right back to our beginning of, it's not my outcomes. I didn't do this. I couldn't have done that. I would not have known what to say. And I would not have even thought to pray with him had that not been an inspiration. That God put me on the phone with him, but then he handled the situation. And that's why it's so easy for me to say that this isn't mine. I don't own this C12 thing, because I have many things like that have happened over time to say, if I stay on what God's calling me to do each day, he'll take care of everything I need that day. So I just shorten it to say, I get on God's agenda, he takes care of my agenda. And that's how my day, if I'm in my sweet spot, that's how my day rolls. Right. If I'm not, I'm all over the board.
Yeah, which then blends into everything else that we've talked about. No excuses, of holding yourself accountable, working with others, sharing time with the right people, being around the right people.
Right, being grateful.
Yeah, and sharing your story. So you coming in here, first of all, we're grateful that you're here to talk to us. It's the middle of the day. I think it's a Wednesday. The days they come and go, but here and you're sharing the story. And about a year ago, year and a half maybe or so, you started sharing your story. I mean, you've always talked and shared your story, but we're getting it out there more. You're getting it out there more.
Yeah.
There's different mediums. We've talked about social media. We've talked about audio. We've talked about you're at events and you're talking to people. You do presentations. Why now? Why are you sharing your story? Why? And the word is content. Why are you creating content? It could be, well, some wise person once told me I should probably do that, right? But what is it for you to create content? Because they just did some video work, and it wasn't just you, it was other people talking about what C12 meant to them. They don't get on camera, they don't get on audio, they don't get the mic out and start saying this stuff unless they believe it. Those aren't those people. Right. Some people will do that and they'll con you. That's not this.
Yeah.
Why are you
one thing about that. So before I say why, I would say that, our members participate a lot in the growth of C12, and they're willing. It's always been, our operating strategy has always been give members value and then give members the opportunity to express the value they're getting to other people. And some of those people will want to come and join. That's been our operating strategy since the very beginning. And now the good news is people like you and your team are helping us to do that more than just getting 5 people to come to breakfast. We can put that on LinkedIn. We can put that on other social media platforms. We can put that out in the marketplace in more exciting ways. And because it's members doing that with no expectation of return, I mean, the only thing they get out of doing that is the satisfaction of thinking that they're helping to build this and that they're going to have stronger board tables. That's all there is. There's no compensation for that kind of stuff. And so the fact that they do it is incredible to me, that they're willing to take time to do these videos and say these things. The why I'm willing to share a story. We talked about my being Italian. Well, in an Italian family, you don't talk about the family to anybody, right?
Yeah,
it's like The Godfather, right?
Right.
You don't talk outside the family. So, I spent my whole life, not talking outside the family, or my younger life. And I think as I started to really deepen my faith, then I realized that if you want to connect with people, you have to be vulnerable and you have to be willing to talk about yourself and not just the good stuff, because good stuff's okay, but that doesn't really connect with people. It's when you connect over struggles or, things that are happening, real life, that you really connect with people. So that really started me on the journey of talking more about my personal life, which, was a total role reversal. The reason why we're doing it now and the reason why, your team is so valuable to us is because we believe that C12 Greater Charlotte should be more than just some groups of CEOs around tables, and that it should be many CEOs around tables with lots of people like me leading those groups. And that even if they're not sitting around the table, we have a message for them. We have something for them to hear, that there's a way to lead businesses and make a difference in people's lives and have a profitable business. And those are not mutually exclusive, that you can do both. And in fact, when you do both prosper more. If you have a profitable business, you can help and serve people better. If you serve people better, you will probably have a more profitable business because those things show up. Employee retention, customer satisfaction levels, they show up on a P&L. They might not be under that heading, but they're under all those expenses and they're under revenues. So that message that we want to put out there, we want to reach as many people in the Charlotte marketplace as we can with it. If they own a business and they join C12 and they engage deeper in that, that's exciting. If they only hear that and think about it and make a little bit of a change, that's good too.
Yeah. It doesn't matter what their background is, what their religion is, where they came from. None of that stuff matters.
People can make a difference you can make a difference in someone's life when you put their interests above your own. So if your faith encourages you to do that, if your faith holds you accountable to do that, that's fantastic. And that's what we talk about around the C12 table, because we're faith-based.
Well, and that's the reason why your members are willing to share a message and a story, because you've shared the message and the story.
I think so.
And they're coming back around and be like, of course, I would share any story. And that you share this authentic message that reaches somebody, to someone who couldn't join because there's not a CEO, they're not faith-based, let's say, or whatever that is right there. They just heard the good message.
When we first thought about growing C12, it was years ago. And the model for C12 was maybe bring on one other person, or maybe two other people to work in the marketplace. And so we tried to do that, and we struggled to find people, and we struggled to find the right person to come on board. But over the last couple of years, we've been talking more vision than just individual opportunity. And by talking vision, I think I've probably talked to 30 or 35 people who might be interested in being a C12 chair. And some of them are not qualified. Some of them have been qualified. Some of them are in the pipeline right now. Some are already on board. Some explored it and said it's not for me. But the dynamic has changed dramatically from maybe talking to 2 people a year to talking to 2 people a month, 3 people a month, So, and in the meantime, we're still talking to members and CEOs and leading groups. So yeah, that's all changed. The vision of it is exciting.
It is exciting. And then you can listen to this podcast now, for example, and you can come on here. We always say this, and they could say, I don't believe anything Tony says. Well, then you know what? You don't have to waste any time talking to that individual about being a chair or member or whatever.
Right.
Just talked about time a lot. This helps that. Now, I don't think people are going to think that, but that's the other end of it. They can come on and say, that's someone I would like to spend some more time with or learn from or be mentored by or whatever. I want to be a part of that community. How do I do that? Yeah. That's what content can do for you. And it doesn't just have to be a podcast. It can be a snippet. It could be something else. It could be something else said, or they all come together in different parts and you hear it in different times. You're like, yes. That's what it's about.
And we're trying to be wise with that. And I think that's what you guys are helping us do, because there's so much noise out there. How do you break through? Someone wants to connect with you on LinkedIn, and the next thing you know, they want to talk to you about how you can save money on your insurance or your phone bill or something, right? And it's all of a sudden they're like your best friend because you've connected on LinkedIn and you didn't know that person yesterday and you won't be talking to them tomorrow. So I think it's really how to authentically engage in it and how to meet people where they are and see if there's a genuine interest on both sides to go further. And I think that's what we're trying to do now this is who we are. If you talk to any of our members, if you talk to me, if you talk to any of our chairs in Greater Charlotte now who are leading groups, you're going to get a very similar story. We may not all use the same words, but you're going to get the same theme of just who C12 is, what we do, why we do what we do, and where we're trying to go. You're going to hear that. And if that resonates with you, fantastic. If it doesn't, okay, challenge yourself a little bit. Just ask yourself, am I only working to make money? Do I only have a business to support my lifestyle? If that's where you are right now, then challenge yourself and ask yourself, am I going to feel that way 30 years from now when I'm done with this thing? Am I going to feel like all I did was get myself a bigger boat? Or have I changed people's lives? And I think when we get to those points, we're going to look back and say, I've been significant in the lives of other people, and that's my true reward. And I've had a good life, and I've provided for my family, and we've provided, for others monetarily and with material things, but we've also transformed lives.
Yeah. And it takes time to get there. Like we talked about, years to think about that, to not have that immediate return. It doesn't work that way, does it?
Not usually.
Not usually.
Not usually.
The one last thing I want to touch on, and you talked about being hit on LinkedIn. Next thing you know, they're selling you something. And you're talking in this other world of just having these conversations and building these relationships. There's an abundance. So the person that's reaching out to you and immediately wants to turn you into a sale, they have missed it completely. Now I get it. There's some things that you can sell. I got a pair of sunglasses. They're $5. You want to buy them or not, right? I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about real relationships, in building business that's for the long term. There's an abundance out there. You could have a C12. He could have another group. I could have a group. Could all coexist together. We could work together even.
Right.
It's just fascinating to me.
Right.
Some of our best clients that we've had in marketing have been other marketing companies that say, we don't do this well. Can you do that for us? Right. In a way, we're competitors, but no, just take those lines and throw them away.
Right.
We can actually work together now. I get it. Some businesses with compliance, you can't do that. There's an abundance. And I think I obviously see that. To say, we can work this. I'm not trying to turn every person I talk to into a sale. That's not what you can be in sales and not have to turn everybody into a sale. And that's what we're seeing a lot. So that's where the negative on the side of social media can come in. Is like, I can see you, I hit you up, and immediately I want to sell you something. It's not what this is about. This is going deep. This is thinking big. This is taking time to really contemplate. Now, at some point, you got to push, you got to do something. You got to, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think for us too, and I think if you ask any C12 member, not only in Greater Charlotte, but anywhere in the country, I think I would be surprised if left alone without any prompting, they would say they bought something. Most of the time they think about joining. I joined C12. I didn't buy C12. They get an invoice, they pay monthly dues, but they don't look at it like a sale, and I don't look at it like a sale. There's an influencing. And so we have to learn how to talk about C12 to try and get some understanding of what it can possibly be. But I think where we've had the most success in having people join C12 is they come and see it. They come to a briefing around a topic that we might have. Like right now, we're talking about high performance, high potential teams, and what do they look like, and how do we build them, and how do we build them in a tight labor market, and how do we build them when there's so many distractions out there for our teams? So, where do we find them? How do we onboard them? How do we train them, develop them? and align them around common purpose to go get something done. And so we have briefings like that. We have CEOs and presidents and business owners come to those. Some are happy just to talk about that for an hour or so, have some breakfast, and go back to their office. Some say, hey, I'd like to, if this is what you guys are, if this is just a sort of a taste of what goes on, I'd like to hear more about it. And so either way, we're impacting people with those kinds of things,
How does someone learn more about C12?
Probably the best thing to do is to get in touch with me.
How do they do that?
Well, they can come on my LinkedIn page.
There you go.
Right? They can tweet me.
Yeah.
They can, but I think the best thing to do is just look up C12 Group on our website and go to North Carolina, Charlotte, and there's my Tony Tennaro at C12group.com, Tony.Tennaro at C12group.com, and talk about coming to see it. What I'll say to them if they contact me is, no matter how much we try to do the best we can to talk about C12, the only way to really understand it is to experience it and talk to other members, not to me. Talk to other members about why they do it every month, why they show up. And that way, and then come. And if they decide it's something they want to do and we mutually decide it's the right thing, then come do it. If they just have a different experience for the morning or for the day, that's great too.
Yeah. Well, use the word experience, and then I'd look at it like this has been an experience for me to sit down and chat with you. And we've talked.
Same here.
But you sit down and you get to, we talked a lot. Frank Reich and Maryland and, Black & Decker, and here we are today. It is about that experience. It's a lot of fun. It's more fun that way. And you learn more, and I'm all about it. My younger self would, I said at recent post, my younger self would probably laugh at myself today, but that's part of the maturation process, I think, and just, give yourself a break and move on and keep getting better, like you always say. But Tony, we've been talking for a while, and I appreciate your time and your energy and just the way you think about things. So thank you.
Thanks. It's been a lot of fun to be with you. Thanks for doing this. I think the podcasts are valuable, and I think people can draw something from it. And yes, maybe our younger self would laugh at us today, but maybe as our older selves, we're laughing at those people too.
For
right?
100%, yeah.
Right, for all the things we thought we were and all the things we thought we were going to do.
We knew everything, right? Yeah.
We knew it all. We knew it all, and yet so little. So, but thank you. It's been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed it, and I think this is something I'll remember for a long time, just hanging out with you here.
Well, thank you. One of the best things about CADSource is having the content platform that gives us the opportunity to chat with amazing people like Tony Tennaro, and then having the ability to bring the content to you through our podcast platform. If you want to learn more about Tony and C12, you can find him on LinkedIn. If you want to connect with me, you can find me on LinkedIn or contact me on Twitter at Eric_Kaz. Thank you for listening to our CADSource podcast, Entrepreneur Perspectives, building and protecting your business one podcast at a time. Until next time, we're out of here. This episode is brought to you by the CADSource brand Podcast. Podcast is your podcast production team. You know how many business leaders need help communicating their story through audio? That's what we do. Podcast strategy, creation, and distribution for business leaders. This provides opportunities, relationships, and a platform for you and your business. Why do we do this? Because at Podcast, we exist to help you create and share amazing content through podcasts. Learn more by visiting podcast.com.